All right, 23, part 2. Okay, like I was saying before I started pulling this up and while we're waiting for PowerPoint to work, um, we have an article, a summary coming up. So that will be due on Monday, this upcoming Monday. I want to remind everybody when you read the article, a lot of these articles are difficult to read. That's understandable. Be yourself. Don't try to be, don't try to, like, if you don't understand it, say so. And because I've had assignments where I've had difficult articles, and in my summaries of those articles in my own classes that I took, I said this article was difficult to read, but this is what I think it means. All right. So even if I was wrong, and the professor told me I was wrong on a couple of times, but he also said, yeah, that agreed that many of these are difficult to read. A lot of these are written by people that are really pompous and they think they're smarter than you, so they're going to write in a language that is purposefully difficult to read so that you're to make you think you're an idiot if you can't read it, or to make themselves sound smarter if it's difficult to read. And so that happens sometimes. If you come across that, just be honest, be yourself, and do that. The other thing is, I want to see statements like, at the beginning of the article, the artist said, or the author said this, and in the middle of the article, the author said that, and at the end of the article, the author said this, and use the author's name. So Smith said this, Smith said that, Smith believes that, blah 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 blah, and so just be yourself. Don't try to make it sound all fancy. All right. Remember, these assignments are going to look professional, but they're going to be actually very casual. All right. I just want you guys to read the materials and to understand art history. You don't have to be an expert in art history by the end of this class. I just want you to engage with art history. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so I think we left off with the Garden of Earthly Delights. I think we finished it. Did we do butt music? All right. Aha. So we do, yes. All right. Here we go. Money Changer and his wife. All right. Let me dim the lights. Marco, can you get that stool over there, please? All right. So with Money Changer and his wife, this is a perfect example of how the Reformation changed art history or changed art. Um, so we have more secular pictures like this. In fact, well, there is some religion in this picture, but it's not, a picture of Jesus. It's not a story from the Bible. It's not this grand, like a throne of mercy where it has God the Father, the Holy Ghost. So there are some religious messages in here, but that's not the full story. And money changers are a common occupation during this time. That there's, with every city state, there's a different currency. You can imagine if each state in the United States had a different currency, and then you travel from one state to another, you got to change your money and this is what people in Europe face, because that's why they changed it to the euro. But before that, it was a headache to change your money as soon as you cross the border. So that's what he's doing. He's counting the coins. Um, and this is a field where there's a lot of corruption. Like you can charge money to change somebody's coins. Somebody has a bunch of British pounds and you need to change it to French francs, and you're the only one that can change it. So you can charge whatever you want. You can, and that's not right. You shouldn't charge prices that are too high. That's greedy. But like I said, this is more of a secular image than a religious one. And my notes here say that Northern Europe became secular before other parts of Europe because of the new wealth, the distance from the Pope or the papacy, and that Northern Europe is a hotbed for Reformation. But there are a couple of images in here. So, for example, she's reading a Bible. Now, again, with the Northern Renaissance, how do you identify Northern Renaissance as opposed to Southern Renaissance or the Italian Renaissance? Right, the detail. And we can see that in here. There's an extreme level of detail. You can see the writing that is in the book. We can see the different pages. And, when a book is open, you can see these, not all of the pages are quite even, and you can see that in the book here. And you can see the reflection in this little convex mirror, which we'll look at a little bit more in just a second. We can see the detail that is in the coins and in the gold rings that are on that tube. And one of the religious messages in here is that she has taken her eyes off of reading the Bible and is now looking at the coins. So the message here is that she is more interested in material things than spiritual things. The wife is showing more interest in gold than in her prayer book. And she's setting aside religion in favor of materialistic things. And the balance, the figure holding the balance he's balancing between the secular and the sacred. That's another little symbol of this painting here. And then if you look real close at that mirror, by the way, convex mirrors were popular in this era, in this location. And we can see a church in the background. That's an extreme level of detail in this painting. And we can see that the figure reflected in this has turned away from the church. He's not looking towards the church. And so that is another reinforcement of the message in this, is that people are looking away from the church towards materialistic things. All right, let me introduce you to Peter Bruegel the Elder. And we have to identify Peter Bruegel the Elder because there are several Bruegels that are artists and a couple of Peter Bruegels that are artists. Peter Bruegel the Elder is the senior, and Peter Bruegel the Younger is the junior. But let's take a look at his artwork. I show you this picture to give you a sense of the size of his artworks. They're all like kind of large, like maybe even a medium-sized painting. They're not giant history paintings like we'll see in the near future. And they're not tiny little intimate paintings either. So they're just this nice medium size and scale. I want you to look at this painting right here. And what do you see in this painting? Yes, I heard people. All right. What kind of people? Right. Common folk, right? This is common folk. And that is exactly leads us into this next a term that I want you to know, and that is genre painting. Genre painting is artworks about common people doing common things. There's no kings and queens here. This is not a war picture. There's no soldiers here. It's not the Pope. It's not stories from the Bible. It's not history. It's not mythology. It's regular, real people doing regular, real things. And this here says a wedding dance. So this is, most likely a wedding, which is a common thing to happen in a village. And all the villagers have come out to celebrate during the wedding. And if we compare this to an Italian Renaissance, and here we have two paintings that have a lot of people in them. Well, one painting is about regular people, and the other one is about a religious event, where Christ is giving the keys to the kingdom to St. Peter. Genre painting is more popular in Northern Renaissance than in Italian Renaissance. In the North, people have a lot more money, so they're paying artists to do things or to paint things that are more pleasing to them. They want to have paintings about their own lives. They want to have paintings about things that they know, and they're not very interested in painting or hiring artists to paint these intense and extravagant religious pictures. And in Italy, all the money is from the church. The only people or the majority of people that are commissioning artworks is the church. So they're commissioning artworks to make money or to make artworks for the church. So it's going to be religious things that will go inside of the church that people can see. But here we have, this Peter Bruegel. He's doing all these um, uh, uh, genre paintings, and he does like to have lots of things to look at. Lots of little tiny stories going on in his artwork. So these are different children's games, and you can so each little one would be a different game for the children. You can see down in the bottom in the center, the hoops is a common game for children. You get a hoop, and then you can run alongside it and make it like it's almost like a single bicycle wheel that rolls alongside you. All right, the fight between Carnival and that. But we're going to skip past these and go to Hunters in the Snow. I want you to know this painting. And the Hunters in the Snow is the painting that is in the center. This gives you a sense of how large this painting is the reason why I had this photograph in there. By the way, I just learned yesterday that Mona Lisa was attacked. Yeah. Soup. All right. So this Hunters in the Snow is in the upper left, and it's part of 6 paintings. It was commissioned by somebody who wanted to show the different seasons. So we have deep winter, early spring, early summer, late summer, and fall. The late spring one is missing. But I just want you to know that this Hunters in the Snow is one part of 6 artworks. So in this, this was painted in the Netherlands by a Netherlandish artist. And the Netherlands is a very flat place. There are no mountains, there are no hills in the Netherlands. So the hills and the mountains in this are very are is fantasy. All right, the artist had traveled to Italy, and in order to get from the Netherlands to Italy, he would have had to have crossed the Alps, and that's where he would have seen mountains like that. But these mountains are there not for realism's sake, but to add visual interest and drama to the picture. It is more visually interesting to see these diagonals than to have a totally flat landscape. That would be boring because it's like living in Houston. All right. So Houston is very flat. I've lived in places that are hilly. It's much more interesting in California with all the hills. And Houston is just a very flat place. So landscapes of like Californian landscapes are much more interesting than Southeast Texas landscapes. All right, now let's take a look at the hunting party coming back from the hunt. Did they have a good hunt? Yes or no? All right, I hear no's. And so, can you tell me why? What makes you think that they did not have a good hunt? Yeah, all the dogs' heads are down. All right. And can you tell what they were hunting? Yes, right. The guy's got one rabbit on that pole slung over his back. All right. So after a full day of hunting, they were able to catch one rabbit. But down in the what I said about Northern Renaissance, details, details, details. We have little rabbit tracks. So there's rabbits around, right? But they couldn't catch any of them. All right. And again, to add to the details of Northern Renaissance, every single brick of that painting of that building is painted, and that is an incredible level of detail. And what I think is an amazing detail in this painting are these trees. Every single twig on that tree, every branch is painstakingly painted, not just like randomly, but he is actually, I can see that he is looking at specific trees and painting those specific trees. And that looks like a photograph of trees in the winter to me. And then a fun part of this painting is all the action happening down in that valley. So the people are in the people in the distance are a little bit more playful. They don't know that they're all going to starve because the hunters couldn't catch anything. But it's not just a landscape, but a landscape given meaning by the activities of the people who inhabit it. There's a lot of fun little details, you know, little small narratives of going on. You can see some people fishing, and I can see it looks like some people are playing hockey, and some kids are chasing each other. But I wish I had my laser right now. There's one guy laying down on, like curled up in a fetal position. Do you see it? All right. I don't think he's having a good day. So, anyways, we have a really harsh landscape, but it's made to come alive with these fun activities on the ice and a couple of more details. You can see that the mill or the water wheel is frozen over. All right, I've got a story time for you, and this is the story of Icarus and Daedalus. Daedalus is he worked for King Minos, and he built the labyrinth to house the Minotaur. And King Minos didn't like having the Minotaur. In fact, the Minotaur is his stepson. Is that right? All right. And so he is embarrassed by the Minotaur, and he hires Daedalus. Now, Daedalus is a genius, and only Daedalus knows how to get in or out of the labyrinth. King Minos puts Daedalus in the labyrinth uh, to get rid of him because he doesn't want he's hoping that the Minotaur will kill Daedalus. He also incarcerates his son Icarus. Minos incarcerates Daedalus' son. And so the two of them are stuck inside of the labyrinth, probably about to be killed by the Minotaur. Well, Daedalus, I said he's a genius, so he fashions a set of wings so that he can escape the labyrinth. And he fashions a set for himself and his son. And so they're going to fly away from the island to freedom. Daedalus instructs his son, "Hey, when we take off, when we fly, I want you to just fly a certain height. All right, don't go too high, don't go too low, because if you do, you know, I only made these wings so that they would fly at a certain. I couldn't make them any better. All right." And when they start flying, Icarus immediately begins to feel the freedom and joy of flying, and he forgets what his father says, and he begins to swoop and sway and go up and down, and he goes way up too high, too close to the sun, and the sun melts the wax that is on the wings that's holding the wings together, and he falls down into the ocean and drowns. And that is the story of Icarus and Daedalus. So, and there we go, Icarus. All right. And if you're wearing Led Zeppelin shirts with this image on it, Led Zeppelin uses the imagery of Icarus in their labels. So, but that brings us to this painting by Bruegel the Elder of the Fall of Icarus. Now, this image looks a lot different than these other artists' interpretations of Daedalus and Icarus. All right, so where are Daedalus and Icarus? Yeah, so you can see him, right? There he is. Oh, oops, right there. All right, and if we get a close up of that right there, we have Daedalus and Icarus. Anyways, I'm just sharing that with you because I love this. This story, and I love this painting. All right, now the kind of the point of this, does it look like anybody else even noticed? All right, so the message in this painting is it's a German proverb that says no plow stops for the dying man. That means that the world is indifferent to our suffering. People die, and most people around are completely unaware. So, you can imagine somebody dies in a bed, and outside the window, the planes keep flying, the cars keep driving, and the birds keep chirping. So that's kind of the story for this painting, or the message behind this painting. All right, we're going to head over to Spain. All right, Spanish Catholicism is different from the others. It's more brutal. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Spanish Inquisition, right? And where is Spain on this map? Yeah, it's in Europe, and it's in the lower left-hand corner of Europe. All right, that's Spain. Our next artist is Domenikos Theotokopoulos. In fifth period, one of the students asked me, "Are we going to need to know his name on the test?" And I said, "Yes, but we're going to call him El Greco." And that's what everybody in the art world calls him, El Greco. What does El Greco mean? This is in Spain, so El means what? The, yes. Greco means what? It means the Greek. All right. So if you look at his name, that's a very Greek sounding name. This guy is from Greece, and he moved from Greece to Spain, and they could not pronounce his name, so everybody just called him El Greco, the Greek. And his artwork is pretty easy to identify. We are talking about mannerism now, and he has these elongated figures. And while there are some bright colors, a lot of it is these dull colors. These like brownish skin tones, brownish skies, brownish ground, and even like if you look at the painting on the right, that blue is a little bit less intense. But these weird anatomical figures, and this is one of my examples for uh, mannerism is that this one of Laocoon, and this story I told you last semester, that as the Trojans are trying to figure out what to do with the Trojan horse that was there on the beach, Laocoon was trying to warn the Trojans, hey, this is a trick by the Greeks. And Poseidon, who wanted to take down Troy, sent two sea serpents out of the ocean and drag Laocoon and his two children back into the ocean and kill them. So, but what I'm showing you this for is these odd figures and these awkward poses is typical of mannerism. But the artwork that I want you to remember is the view of Toledo. And that's the painting on the right there. So I'm showing you this photograph to show you this how large this artwork is. Again, it's just kind of a medium-sized artwork. All right, and so let's get a closer look of this. A little bit more information about El Greco. It means the Greek. He spent a lot of time in Rome and he settled in Spain. Then this is the only pure landscape he made. This is like an oddity by El Greco. Most of his artwork looks like this kind of stuff, very religious but in a mannerist style with a few bright colors, but a lot of dull colors in it. And this could be one of the first landscapes, like pure landscapes in art history. We're at the beginning of landscapes. I did show you like the first landscape back in Catalhayuk, but that was like an anomaly. That was just a weird thing that happened. And throughout, from Catalhayuk to here, there's been almost no landscape. So this is one of these. It begins just like Venus of Urbino begins a trend of nude women reclining on a bed. This begins a trend of landscapes. And it's not an entirely accurate rendering. It's there's a lot of emotion in this. And if you look at the sky is very turbulent. It's so dark where it touches the city. And you know what that sky reminds me of is like when it's cloudy and there's a full moon out, and then the clouds are kind of broken up and you can see the full moon through the clouds. That's what that reminds me of. It's a very turbulent sky. And it's it's more dramatic than it is realistic. El Greco focuses more on what it feels like rather than what it looks like. And Toledo becomes the means through which the artist expresses an interior psychological state and perhaps a view about the nature of man's relationship with the divine. He uses dark, moody colors and a limited palette. What is a palette? Does anybody know what a palette is? Right, a color palette, right? And so like girls might use a palette that have like all the different colors of makeup on it, and so that is a palette. And then artists will have this flat board that they have on, they hold with their hand, and then they pour their paint on this palette, and then they can use that. All right, so when I say a limited palette, what does that mean? Limited number of colors. So on the artist palette, it looks like green and blue and black and white, maybe a little bit of yellow, and that's it. All right. So, he's just using a very few number of colors. And in this instance, the sky and the hills dominate, and the city takes a back, like a lesser role in this artwork. And the clouds look like they're about to storm. And my notes here say this is the first Spanish landscape, and never before has there been a cityscape. This might be the first cityscape. And if you compare it to Van Gogh's Starry Night, both of them have very turbulent skies, and both of them are focused on a city in a landscape, and both of them look like the city is almost like under attack by the night sky. It contains many of the same compositional elements: a swirling sky, an overwhelming nature, a skyline dominated by a church. Van Gogh evokes the calm of a little sleeping town. El Greco's painting captures the violence of an exterior world against an interior one. El Greco reminds us that there is an unfriendly world outside of us and that we are all subject to the forces beyond our control. He leaves it up to us to decide whether we will succumb or prevail. All right, I got another story for you. In 1323, the city of Orgaz, we have Don Gonzalo Ruiz. He is the Count of Orgaz, and he dies, and he leaves a bunch of money for the church. And at his funeral, St. Augustine and St. Stephen show up at his funeral and help bury him. These are guys that lived 1,300 years before he died, and they show up at the funeral to help bury him. So here is our artwork of Saint Stephen and Saint Augustine burying the Count. All right. So at the top we have. Let me see if I can get. All right, I have a pointer up there. So at the top we have heaven, and then at the bottom we have earth, and this is the burial. There's a bunch of guys down here, and each one of these faces is a real person, a portrait. So El Greco was hired to paint portraits of all of these people. And the reason, by the way, here is the Count being buried. And for the people that are watching on video, here's the Count right here. And then Saint Augustine and Saint Stephen, respectively, are there burying him. And all these people are painted as portraits because they want to be seen as having been witness to this miracle that has happened. And this is a painting of an earthly burial versus a heavenly reception. The terrestrial depicted with more realism, and everything above is in a Mannerist style. We have these awkward poses and weird anatomy. We have elongated limbs, and the proportions are not entirely human. The spiritual is abstracted. And the stretching forms, that is a characteristic of mannerism to making them appear more passionate. We have eye contact between the priest looking at Mary, and she is looking back. And here we have a close-up of St. Stephen and St. Augustine putting the body into the tomb. And down on St. Stephen's robe, there is an image of his own martyrdom. All right, I want you to notice the red cross on the chests of a couple of these figures. All right, that is the Order of Santiago. This is going to come up again in a couple of chapters. So we're going to refer this painting to another one that will come up in our next unit. Other religious figures in the lower scene include Franciscan, Augustinian, and Dominican friars. The parish priest of Santo Tome is on the far right. He's the one reading. And other individuals who lived in late 16th century Toledo are also invisible. The men dressed in black and decorated with a red cross belong to the Order of Santiago, an elite military religious order. El Greco, his son, is on the lower left. Also notice that he's pointing at the action that's happening. He says, don't look at me, look at them. So why are there so many portraits? I just said in 1586, a contract had stipulated that portraits must be included to suggest that they witnessed the miracle, even though it happened 200 years prior. And then here we have a portrait of El Greco. He painted himself up in there. And then up in heaven, we can see the image of Orgaz being accepted into heaven. And then we can compare it to other entombments. They're putting somebody in a tomb. So the point of this comparison is that they're showing, this is a real person. Well, I'm not saying that Jesus wasn't real, but this is like a more contemporary person that's in the same pose as Jesus being laid into a tomb. So they're making that connection. All right. Are there any questions about anything that we have discussed today or in Unit 1 or about the beast? All right. That will finish us for today. So we will review tomorrow. We will take part 1 of the test on Monday and part 2 and 3 of the test on Tuesday. We are also, and then we're not done with Unit 1 after that. In fact, let me do this today. Let's see. Oh, we have what, 5 minutes left? Yeah. All right. I have an assignment for you guys after the test. So, but I need to get you guys started on it. All right, I'll give it to you tomorrow. All right, and if so, we're going to review tomorrow. So I will and let me make sure that in Schoology. All right, let me go ahead and stop this.